In this video, I'm going to tell you about the crazy news coming out about the new edition of Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team and what I think about it. So, a little while back, I did a video about this announcement that was coming about this something new for Kill Team. And in that video, I said, you know, hopefully it's not another Pariah Nexus, because we don't need another one of those. Hopefully, what I kind of hoped was that it was going to be some sort of announcement about a new Kill Team, or it was going to be a thing and then a new Kill Team, or something like that. And it came out on a Friday, ciao, if you want to check that out. And then the next day on Twitch, they announced the new edition of Kill Team. So, again, not psychic. So anyway, that video showed us all kinds of new stuff. They mainly focused on the model. So that, I don't know, 50-minute roughly Twitch stream, we looked at models on sprues for a lot of it, and I really wanted to know a lot more about the rules. And I was a little sad because they just kept showing us more and more sprues and some more animations and this and that and whatever. Since then, on the Warhammer community website, they have been telling us about what's going to be changing in the rules, what's going to be happening, all that kind of stuff. And it is, at first blush, it's surprising how much they've changed the rules. I have to be very honest here. I initially was like, I feel like 3 years is too soon to make a new edition of Kill Team. I still feel that to a degree, but from what it looks like from all these articles, they're not just updating it and making a new edition, like when you go from like 8th to 9th in 40K and stuff like that, or, you know, 2nd to 3rd in Age of Sigmar. This is ripping off a pretty big Band-Aid. This is a very, very different rule set than the previous one. So again, I don't know that it needed it, but at least it's not just an upgrade. It's a whole new thing. So I've got notes on my phone and also the website articles that they have come out with, of which there have been like 5 or 6 that I'm going to kind of mention here. So if you're interested, because I don't know that I'm going to keep doing these until the thing actually launches, which is in August, by the way. The game's going to be coming out in August. So I just wanted to kind of touch up because there's been so much information out there, and it's been, I don't want to say shocking, but it's been surprising, certainly. And so I kind of wanted to let people who don't necessarily, you know, pay super close attention to every article that comes out from Warhammer community, and let you know what's going on a little bit. And then if you're interested and really interested to see what's going on, then keep checking with Warhammer community, because they put stuff up pretty frequently. So one of the first articles they put up after the big announcement is about it being totally rebuilt, and it's called 5 Things You Need to Know About the New Totally Rebuilt Kill Team, which, you know, pretty much on the tin there. All new rules, and that seems to be the case. Everything that we keep seeing coming out about the new Kill Team is that it is not just Kill Team from before. A lot of stuff has been changed. Completely brand new stats. It's not only are we not just tweaking numbers, we're just completely tweaking stats. Warhammer Kill Team has always been basically the same as Warhammer 40K by itself, as far as like weapon skill, ballistic skill, and a number of, you know, you have this line of stats for each person in the game, and it's usually weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, attacks, wounds, I don't know, initiative, shoe size, all the, you know, and it's just this long line of numbers. And much like what we saw with Warcry when Warcry came out, that's all being reduced down, and you're having far less information like that instead. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal that the thing that made Kill Team basically kind of 40K light is no longer the thing, because it's a very, very different game with completely different stats and completely different types of attacks and all that kind of stuff. Another big thing, alternating activations, which I'll talk more about a little bit, but that's also a big thing that makes Kill Team's activations were still better than 40K's activations, in my opinion. In 40K, you roll off at the beginning to see who wins, and then it's the rest of the game, it's I go, and then you do all your stuff, then I do all my stuff, and then you just turn after turn after turn, and there you are. At least in Kill Team, the beginning of the round, you rolled off, and then let's say I won, I moved all my stuff, then you moved all your stuff, and then it was alternating activations. But it was activating activations in the shooting phase, and then activating activations in the fighting phase, you know, and stuff like that. And then the new turn, we rolled off again, And maybe you go twice, kind of like you do in Age of Sigmar sometimes, and also with Warcry. So at least it was a better thing there. Now it's very different in that it's basically, you activate a model and do all of its things, and then I activate a model and do that kind of stuff. There's also supposedly in-depth customization, according to this first article, which we'll get into a little bit later. A lot of this stuff is actually kind of referenced in the following articles. This is maybe kind of the initial sort of like look at all the things, and then they kind of delved in the following articles about all of the things. When I talked about the stats changing, they refer to them as bespoke data cards, which bespoke is a thing that you hear a lot over in England, I think, but you don't hear about it as much over here in the United States. But it's basically kind of purpose-made, custom-made, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be special and new, completely new data cards, which are bespoke. Anyway, your games of Kill Team are going to be electrifyingly good thanks to the new bespoke data cards, is the title of the article. And so like I said earlier, the stats are no longer like 40K-esque. They're not, again, ballistic skill. I mean, that stuff, some of that stuff is still in there. Weapon skill, ballistic skill is still in there, but it's on the weapon now and not on the person, which is kind of interesting. So that's kind of weird, but, it's something that you kind of get used to. And it's more like Warcry. I'm just checking my notes here. I liked what happened with Warcry. I was concerned when I first heard about Warcry that it was just going to be kind of like Kill Team was to 40K, Warcry was going to be to Age of Sigmar. And to some degree it is. It's Age of Sigmar smaller, except that the rules are totally different. They're very different. You're using the same models. That's basically what's going on there. Warcry gets you into small-scale skirmish games, gets you buying some models, and then the idea is that maybe eventually you might go, well, if I just add this, this, and this, now I've got 1,000 points for Age of Sigmar, and then I've got 1,500 points, and then, now you've got a room full or basement full of models. Kill Team was a little bit more, this is almost like a beginner primer for 40K in the rules, plus you're also buying models and yada yada. So it's interesting to see now how they're taking what they learned from Warcry and kind of putting it into the new version of Kill Team, but they're still changing things. Even it's not just Kill Team is not Warcry. The new Kill Team is not Warcry. It's got Warcry kind of stuff going on, but they've also added on beyond even that, which I'll get into as well. So it's kind of like, and I guess this makes sense, Games Workshop's design folks put out a game, see what works, and then take the elements that do work, put it in the next game, and the elements that didn't work, and don't put it in, which I think is good. Then an article about shooting, because people are interested in shooting in Kill Team. It's kind of sort of a thing, with a game like that. And long story short is basically most gun ranges have disappeared. So you're playing on a 22 by 30 board, right? And it used to be like certain guns could only shoot so far, and so there might be a situation where, yeah, your las gun, it's got a 24-inch range, and if you're here in diagonal, you might not be able to shoot the other side of the board, but that just doesn't seem super realistic. So they thought, well, let's just fix that. And now most weapons just don't have any range. They just shoot anywhere across the board. There are certain weapons like pistols, flamers, and stuff like that that do have specific ranges because they're designed to be a lot more short range, whether it's the actual range of how far the flamer can go, or whether it's the effective range of firing a pistol, which is not a particularly accurate weapon over range, that kind of stuff, But rifles and things like that, bolters, whatever, generally don't have any range anymore, which is kind of interesting. Las guns can kill from across the board in new Kill Team's Deadly Firefights is the title of the article. And I think it's interesting. So now, basically what happens is that your weapon has these stats like A for attacks, and BS/WS, and it gives you a number, like let's say a 4+, and then you have this like damage thing, which is very much like Kill Team's damage thing, where it's a number / another number. One big difference in new Kill Team from old Kill Team is critical hits. A lot of 40K stuff and things like that, not into critical hits. Warcry got into critical hits, which is basically you rolling a 6. And now you're going to be seeing it in Kill Team. So if you shoot a las gun, let's say, you throw 4 dice, and then you have to you hit on 4-ups, because that's your ballistic skill, and then any 4s and 5s, those get do 2 damage, but a 6 does 3 damage. So that's a really interesting kind of way to make it so that you can do really interesting kind of tweaks to the math. In Kill Team, in Warcry, my Plague Monks for my Skaven, they on their normal damage, if they just do a normal damage, is 1, but when they crit, it's 5. So that's a wide range, and it can get real swingy if they really catch the right spot. So that gives you some really interesting options from the design space, and those things are moving into Kill Team, which is very cool. And then now, if you're being shot at, the defense is, again, a number. That's the number of dice you roll. So let's say your defense is 3. Your save is, let's say, 5 up, which means that you save on 5s or 6s, and then you have a number of wounds. Like a normal veteran guardsman now has 7 wounds. Like that's a very different thing to what we're used to back in regular Kill Team. So again, talking about ripping off the Band-Aid and completely changing the rule set, it's a very, very different thing. Again, a lot like Warcry in some ways, which I think is very cool because I like Warcry a lot. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this affects not just the game. Obviously, it's going to have wide-ranging effects in the game, but how it affects the people who are already playing Kill Team and enjoy it, what they think of the new kind of systems. I forgot to mention also, because of the critical hits and the defense and all that kind of stuff, you can also do critical defends as well. So, and this is something that is even different, again, from Warcry for the most part. If you do a critical defense, then it allows you to basically, let's say you hit me and you did a crit, then to block that crit, I either need to do 2 successful defenses or 1 critical defense, meaning I rolled a 6. So that's a very interesting kind of extra layer, put on top of that. That plus also the special rules that some weapons have, and then there's what I like to call very special rules, which are just basically rules that only affect crits. But it's, you get the SR, and then there's this other thing that says, exclamation point, which makes me think it's, very special. Anyway, but those added things that go onto the weapons are what really kind of makes each of the types of not players, but the characters, the actual figures, very different. Weapon changes can very much change the way this particular, little model happens to act on the field. Close combat is a deadly dance of death in the new Kill Team. I hate the term dance of death. I've never liked it. Anyway, but neither here nor there. Kill Team has changed things quite a bit in close combat, which I think is important. One of the things that they did that I really like is that when close combat happens, it can go either way. You know what I mean? Like in normal 40K and in a lot of other games, if it's my turn and I go to fight you, I either do damage or not, or maybe I almost do damage, but you block it, save it, whatever. But in the real world, if I go up to punch you and I'm not good at it, you could certainly punch me first, even though it's my turn, and then I will take damage. Even though it's my turn, I attacked, but you could kick my butt because you're just paying attention and you've got better reflexes and whatever. So they're doing that now in this. When you attack somebody in this game, it's basically your melee attack versus their melee attack, and you are taking successes, and the person who gets to attack first. So let's say I'm attacking you, I get 2 successes and you get 2 successes because we roll off at the same time. Me being the attacker, I get to take my first success and say, okay, this is going to be a hit, and then you get to take one and say, well, this is going to be a parry. You're going to parry my hit, and back and forth that way. So there's a possibility if I only did 1 hit on you, but you did 3 on me, even though it was my turn, I might have to use my only hit turn it into a parry, and still take a bit of a thumping back in this direction. And that, I think, is very, very interesting. Another thing that's interesting about the new system is there's no saves when you're in close combat. You're saving whatever, your armor save, that kind of stuff. It doesn't happen when you're in close combat. When you're close combat, it's very simple to figure out to take that blade and stick it in the armpit as opposed to, right, straight, middle, center mass. So I think that's also really cool, and I feel like it's going to make close combat a lot more deadly than it was in the previous edition. Also, this article was the one where they kind of talked about how movement works. We've all seen, if you've been looking at the stuff, if you looked at the Twitch stream that they did where they announced everything, that there's these new kind of measurement gauges with the different shapes, the circles and the triangles and the whatever. So that basically ranges are now measured in 1s, 2s, 4s, and 6s. Movement is generally in units of 2s, which are the white circles. And so it says here that in the article that most models move either 2 white circles, which is to say 4 inches, or maybe they move 3 white circles, which is to say 6 inches. So movements are a lot different than what we're used to in the past as well, obviously, because a lot of models basically were moved 6 in the old days. The reason that you use this now is so that when you go across a piece of terrain, you just reduce 1 circle. So you could have just said you get to reduce 2 inches, but whatever. Anyway, they also say in the article that if you just want to use a tape measure, knock yourself out, you can do that. And then thank all that is holy for alternating activations. It is about time the Kill Team has moved into that. These smart activation rules will make your Kill Team clashes more tactical and reactive. Yeah, they will. They will. That's how alternating activation works. It makes things better in skirmish gaming. Anyway, so generally now most models, they say in the game, have got 2 activations. You can normal move, you can charge, you can shoot, you can fight, you could fall back, although falling back takes 2 activations. And then there's unique action, which I think sometimes takes 1, sometimes 2. I don't remember exactly. But most models can do 2 activations. However, of course, Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines, because they're meta-humans or whatever, they can take 3. And then as an example in the article, Custodes can take 4 actions in a single move. So you're going to be starting to see a lot more of those big pointy gold boys on the table, I have a suspicion, going forward once this new edition comes out. So the thing is that I don't think, the way that they said it in the article is that most actions can't be duplicated. So it's not like it looks like you can move. But I could be wrong on that. They're not super clear. But it did mention something about most activations can't be, done twice. So we'll have to see how that works. I don't know what you're going to do with 4 if you can't move. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that activation thing, the concept of I activate my model, now you activate a model, now I activate a model, and that's the way that games generally, I think, work best in skirmish. It may not necessarily obviously work best in big army games. That's a different story. But in skirmish games, which is what games work, or what Kill Team is to a T, alternating activations is a big deal. Another big deal that just dropped today, Thursday the 22nd, points have disappeared. So when you're going to build yourself a kill team for your kill team, there's no points. Article's called "New Kill Team Replaces Points with a Fast, Finely Balanced List Building System." These titles are very specific and long, I think, for articles, but whatever, that's fine. So basically, instead of using points, which is what you used in regular Kill Team in the past, you built 100-point lists, maybe 125, depending on what you were playing. If you were doing elites and stuff like that. Now you have this sort of operative list for every different faction out there. And the operative list says that, you can build using this. And so they will say you need to have this kind of leader that has these different options. You choose whatever. Now, what's interesting in this is that if you've got a leader, you can choose, let's say for an example with here with the guard, your leader can have either a bolt pistol or a plasma pistol or a something else. I forget what the third thing is. So those are very different. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the old power level stuff. And by old, I mean it's still being used to this day. But in 40K, it came out, I think, in 8th edition, which is why I call it old. In power rating, you could basically say, look, let's play a 25 power rating army. And then you could really stack everything by saying, I'm going to put all the best weapons in there, because in power rating, it didn't really pay attention to the loadouts. It just paid attention to the number of models in each unit and that kind of thing. This is sort of the same way. Your leader can go with power sword and plasma pistol or not. You could go with something else. Now, the way, because we're maybe thinking in the old 40K way where it's like, oh, well, we're doing it this way because obviously the plasma pistol's better. Well, maybe things are different now with these new stats. The power, sword is different than the chain sword, not necessarily all that better. Maybe it's swingier in the in the range for criticals, and maybe the chainsword is not, so therefore it's a little bit more of a steady Eddie, and you know exactly what's going on more often than not. Whereas here you're going to get that kind of thing like I talked about with the Skaven, where you're either you're doing 1 damage or 5 damage, and who knows. So that's an interesting thing for the building. But you basically just have this list that says, here's your list of potential operatives. These you can only take 1 of maximum of each, and this you can take as many as you want, and that's what you do. And then they tell you the number of models you can take. So instead of sitting down and saying, here's the points, figure it out, it's honestly a little bit easier in my mind to build, because you're just like, no, okay, I got to take this many models. Now I get to pick which ones I take. And I think that's a little bit faster and easier. They're also introducing something called fire teams because some factions can actually take 2 teams. So they have these 2 fire teams. Other factions can only take 1. Guard, for instance. Honestly, most Horde armies are probably going to be the ones that can split up into 2 fire teams, and the ones that are a little bit more elite, your Space Marines and stuff like that, can only take 1 fire team. Now, the thing here is that if I'm guessing, those fire teams are going to be a little analogous to in Warcry, where you have the shield, the hammer, and the sword kind of different groups. You have your group of models that you take at the beginning of the game, and you split them into those 3 groups, and they have to do with deployment. I have a suspicion that if you are, let's say, a group of Tyranids and you're split into 2 fire teams, very possibly you'll have to deploy the second fire team maybe in the second turn, or it depends on the scenario, I suppose. Maybe on the other side of the board, who knows? So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that stuff works out. Lastly, there's this thing, at least in this kind of diagram here, that says archetype security. So I do wonder, and they haven't really said, are there going to be different types of operative lists depending on how you want to play your faction? Maybe in the factions, and again, we don't know this for sure, I'm just kind of guessing, sort of spitballing here. Maybe in the factions, there'll be like archetype security, archetype defense, archetype scouting, where different types of lists of, frankly, different types of operative lists that you'll be able to use depending on how you want your group to work. That'd be very interesting as well. I think that we're going to see, obviously, more changes because they've already talked about some other things that are coming out in articles soon. So if you're interested in that, again, just take a look at the Warhammer, site. Community, Warhammer community site. I was like, Warhammer Communications? No, that's not right. It's kind of right, but it's not. Warhammer community website. Keep an eye out for new Kill Team stuff if you're interested in Kill Team, because it sounds like, unlike, Games Workshop of old, they're going to tell us a lot of stuff as we keep getting closer and closer to the launch. And as of today being the 22nd, I bet your pre-order will probably go live sometime in the next couple of weeks, because they said this game's coming out in August, so it'll probably be late August, but that means pre-order's coming soon. So if you're interested, if you've always been interested in Kill Team, but it seemed a little bit too much like 40K and you weren't sure, this might be something for you to keep an eye on and check it out, and then watch some battle reports once it comes out, and then decide whether you want to pick it up or not. And if you're already a Kill Team player, you may have to tweak some of your rosters and some of your lists, your kill teams, and change them a little bit here and there. But on the other hand, you may not. You may be lucky and things will work out real well. But it'll be interesting to see how the games change and how play changes and how all the different factions all of a sudden seem very different going forward in the future in the new Kill Team.